Hey guys, it's Matt here, and today I'm bringing you another episode of Matt Rants. Also, we have some more Matt Rants coming up today, so stay tuned for those as well. Now, before we get into the question of the video, because yes, for some of you new listeners, we usually have questions around each and every episode of Matt Rants. Some of them don't, but most of them do. Before we even get to that question, though, I do want to say that for some either longtime listeners or some listeners who came in around the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Rants that I did recently, with this topic at hand, you might think I'm going to go one way, but I actually might surprise you a little bit. So before we get to that, though, before we get to the actual some of the intricacies and stuff like that, let's talk about the question, which is, should this Red Dead Redemption 2 YouTuber have been banned? Specifically banned from YouTube, and of course it's his channel that's banned. His name is Shirako, and we're going to talk about the facts. There are 3 articles in the description box down below. There are some issues that I have with the articles as well, but again, we'll get to that a little bit later. Let's just bring you the facts. So, the facts right now are that Shirako's channel was taken down along with a video. The video itself, by the way, would also like to mention that he has a bunch of Red Dead Redemption 2 content on his channel. This one in particular, though, was called Red Dead Redemption 2 Beating Up Annoying Feminist. Again, we're going to talk about the title of the video, but the content was him feeding a suffragette. A suffragette is an older term for feminist, and the reason why suffragette was used instead of feminist, because if you don't know, the game takes place in 1899, which is actually 20 years before women were allowed to vote in the United States. So the video, while it does have that content, let's also remember that this is completely 100% Red Dead Redemption 2 footage, and also on his channel itself, there also are videos of him not just killing other NPCs and other characters in the game, but also one specifically with the KKK and other people as well. So it isn't just limited to suffragettes. It isn't just a channel that's dedicated to killing feminists, virtual feminists, of course, but still feminists in every single video. That's not the case whatsoever. But the reason why I was saying that I have issues with the articles themselves, before I get into the topic of the specific, like the thumbnail in that video, and also the content in the video and the comments and stuff like that. Just talking about the articles, the 3 in particular, one was by Motherboard, which is Vice, another one was by Unilad, and another one was by The Guardian. The first thing that I noticed that I wasn't the biggest fan of, and I know, the title of an article isn't the entire article. I totally get that. That's why I make sure to read articles and not just go by the titles, but there are a lot of people out there that just look at a title of an article, get shocked, and while it is their responsibility to read on, I still think that in certain cases there are issues where you do need to be careful the way you're titling your article. Now for a video, some of you guys will say the same thing, and I do agree, but at the same time a video is much different than an article, where you have to listen to the entire video, where with the article you still have to read it, of course, but it's a bit different because usually YouTube videos will start with a question of some kind, a bit like ours, and then we answer it and talk about it through the video. But when it comes to these articles, or in general with news articles, usually it's not a question that's being asked, unless it's an opinion piece of some kind. If you're reporting on the news, when you look at Motherboard or Vice's article, it says Red Dead Redemption 2 players are excited to attack and kill feminists in the game. I'm not even getting into the fact that the KKK members can be killed and other people can be killed, but it seems as if this is a huge problem, like everybody's doing it. Now, to be fair, I have not been able to look into it to see how many people are doing it other than Shirako. Maybe it is happening with a bunch of Red Dead Redemption 2 players, but the thing is, with how popular Red Dead Redemption 2 is, you would have to do some type of study, and it would still be flawed, of course, but some type of study where this is happening, because while I don't know anyone personally who's playing Red Dead Redemption 2, I see it on my Twitter feed all the time. I see it even in Facebook, people doing PS4 share or just sharing funny jokes, and I see more people accidentally punching their horse and getting kicked, or petting dogs, or doing a bunch of other things that do not involve killing feminists or specifically suffragettes. So when it comes to that, I feel like that was misleading. And also I would like to mention too, before I even get into other things that I think were a little bit either misleading or I think should have been mentioned for some type of context, I don't believe that the entirety of the media is going against YouTube and YouTubers. I'm not a big fan of this idea of war, trying to think that, oh, well, we're at war with them or anything like that. That isn't the case whatsoever. Now, if you're going to tell me, but Matt, there are a lot of news organizations that do seem a little bit antagonistic towards other YouTube, news outlets or online news outlets. That I can give you. I think in that regard, yes, you could have bigger news outlets, mainstream news outlets, being a little bit nervous about some of the smaller guys taking their spot due to, 18 to 35 demos potentially going over to YouTube rather than, even teens and stuff like that, rather than sticking with mainstream media. Okay, I can give you that, but I don't think that Vice is worried about how YouTubers are covering gaming content. Like, all those people are going to go over to Vice, or, CNN is worried about Red Dead Redemption 2, as if people who are playing Red Dead Redemption 2, if they can't do that, they're going to start watching CNN. So, in that regard, I don't agree that the media is after us or anything like that. I will admit, looking at the title of the Guardian's article, though, Red Dead Redemption 2, game criticized over killing of suffragette, that is accurate. That is actually a very accurate title of the article. I do think the article itself was a bit lacking. Funnily enough, I liked the Vice article more than I did the Guardian, and I'll explain why in a second. But funnily enough, I think that one actually was meatier and kind of criticized Rockstar in a way that I enjoyed, or at least maybe not criticized, but it definitely brought attention to the fact that Rockstar put this into their game. And I think that while Scirocco should still be should have accountability for his actions, I'm not going to sit there and say that he is just free from any type of criticism, because I do think that if the question in this video was, does Scirocco deserve criticism? Sure. Because anyone can deserve criticism. You can say my video isn't good for X, Y, or Z reasons. You can say you dislike me for, the way that I speak, or the way that I say a lot, or something like that. So I don't think that people are above criticism. It is just the idea that, of course, his channel was removed. It has been brought back, but at the time it was removed, not just the video, but the whole channel itself over that infraction. And I would also like to mention as well, speaking, because we're talking about different article titles here, the Unilad article title specifically was Red Dead Redemption 2 players keep killing feminists in the game. Again, yes, it's still misleading due to the fact that I'm not saying that just because I didn't know about it, it's a problem. So to be fair, I do want to point that out. Just because I haven't been saying it doesn't mean that it's not a problem or that no one is doing it. Because of course people are doing it. Scirocco is doing it, and 1.5 million people have seen that video. But that doesn't mean that they've gone out and recreated that. But either way, though, jumping back to that whole criticism of Rockstar that I was talking about, while Scirocco still does have some type of responsibility in this because he did it, he uploaded the video, yes. However, at the same time, Rockstar allowed it to happen in the game. They could have maybe made sure to not have it happen, or even changed how it happens in the game. So I feel as if when it comes to media, at least the outlets and the articles that I've seen, it seems as if they are not, if they're going to criticize someone over this, I'm not saying they can't criticize Scirocco in any way, but why are they criticizing YouTube for having it on their platform? Why are they criticizing Scirocco for putting it up and not as much on Rockstar for making it and allowing it to happen in their game? If you create something and allow it to happen, I would argue that you are just as, if not more, responsible for doing that than the person who did it, because they could have easily turned that off. I mean, look at something like Marvel's Spider-Man. They could have turned on the ability for Spider-Man to just punch people really hard, but they didn't. They didn't do that for a reason. Also, you can't kill children in Red Dead Redemption 2 for a reason. So I'm not even saying that you couldn't kill suffragettes if you can kill those in the KKK. What I'm saying is that if you're going to criticize someone over this, I think you should criticize specifically Rockstar. Now, why am I saying that you shouldn't necessarily remove that feature entirely? You could if you wanted to, but at the same time, everyone other than kids can be killed, including the horses, in Red Dead Redemption 2. That means that everything is on the table. Also, as I've mentioned before, I don't believe, looking at the studies, looking at the facts, that video game violence causes actual violence. In kids, it's been known to cause aggression, but aggressive behavior doesn't exactly equal violence. And there has not been any conclusive study that has said that violence, either in children or in adults, can be caused by video games. They're used as an outlet. Yes, I will admit, if someone came to me and said, "Oh man, Matt," a friend of mine said, "Oh man, I really love killing these feminists. It just puts a smile on my face." I would in no way say that that doesn't put up a red flag of some kind. It's just a weird thing to say out loud, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that someone's YouTube channel should be pulled down just because of that, or that a video in particular, or that it causes that type of violence in the real world, because you do have some people saying that in some of these articles that, oh, even though we're not saying that it could cause that type of violence, it is concerning. And again, I'm not saying that it isn't necessarily concerning. I'm not saying that if I heard someone say that in real life, oh, it was just so beautiful being able to do that. Looking at some of the comments in the YouTube video, which were mentioned on Motherboard or on Vice, yes, those comments are very weird. I will 100% admit. The problem, though, and something that I do think could be mentioned in context, is when you have 1.5 million people watching your video, and other videos of his as well, Scirocco's in this case, you can't monitor every single video. Now, you could argue, well, maybe he should have turned that comment section off. Perhaps. I'm not saying that he, in any way couldn't have turned that off. Maybe that would have made it a bit better to not kind of have that kind of community fostering in your comments section. But again, while I haven't been able to see the comments in his video where he does kill off KKK members, you could have similar comments in the other direction. Now, of course, while I've been comparing the two, there is no comparison. We do have to acknowledge that as well. As far as I've known and seen, the KKK members, while some of them can light themselves on fire, they also have weapons of their own to fight back. I do think that perhaps the suffragettes should have been given some type of weapon to fight back if necessary. Now, yes, it might not have been historically accurate, but at the same time, it may have helped make things seem like there's an even playing field even more, because, well, some would say, oh, everyone can be killed as an even playing field, but at the same time, the KKK members, as far as I know, can have weapons and bring weapons to the table and fight back, where the suffragettes cannot. Although it is noted, something that should be noted in the Vice article as well, is that there are missions where you can help the suffragettes. So yes, you can either help them or you can hurt them, giving you that choice in the game. So really, yes, the choice is up to you whether or not you want to hurt them. So that is true as well. But at the same time, I do think that a suffragette with no weapon does seem a little awkward. Also, some of the titles of the videos as well. I think if they used suffragette in the title of the videos, perhaps that would have made it a lot easier for him to say, hey, it's a character in the game. Granted, it still is a character in the game no matter what. You can see it visually. It's right there. It's a character in a video game. But at the same time, I do think using the modern term, feminists, if he had put the word SJW in there or something like that as well, I do think it just signals to a certain crowd this kind of it flips a kind of switch for them to kind of go, yeah, of course, it's feminist, etc., etc., rather than the specific term suffragette that's used in the game that's more time period appropriate. So I do wonder if maybe that would have helped his case a bit better, or at the very least, I would have been on his side a bit more than I already am now, but I would have been even more on his side, saying not only is it a video game character, but he's using the video game appropriate terms. It's allowed in the game, and again, that just points the finger right back at Rockstar if you are going to point the finger at anyone. Also, before I brought up context, and the reason why context is important is because while I've called out PewDiePie before, the reason why that I have is because, people talked about the Wall Street Journal, oh, they got his jokes out of context. He was just reacting to people saying stuff about him being this way, etc., etc. Well, yes, you can say that maybe about some of his jokes, but when it came to something like the Fiverr situation, or even when he recently slipped the N-word out, I say slipped, quote-unquote slipped the N-word out during a live stream, I felt as if there was no context there. It was just, oh, well, you have to understand he was gaming. Okay, there are a bunch of people that I know that game that don't talk that way during gaming. Sure, I'm not saying they don't swear, right? You can be, my friends will call me an asshole, et cetera, and all this stuff, but we don't go there. So I don't understand why we have to just excuse PewDiePie for going there. So I don't think that that's context, quote unquote, for what he said or what he's done in certain situations. The reason why, in this case with Scirocco, though, I talk about the context, and again, overall, I talk about the context, is because in this Vice article, they talk about what specific users were saying in that YouTube video. But I do think that looking at the KKK video or other videos that he's done for Red Dead Redemption 2 should also be brought into question as well. Now, not every single video on YouTube, of course, because like I mentioned earlier, you should be going into something thinking that, everyone is good and not having biases about something, but some people just really don't know about a platform. They're not on that platform, so they're expecting news articles to discuss that platform with them. And this one paints the entirety of gaming YouTube in a bad light, which I do think is a little bit problematic. Now, again, I don't think you should be going to every single YouTuber because you don't have the news doing that all the time. You know, I said this earlier, you don't have the news coming up and going, yes, there was this bad thing, but here is a puppy. That isn't what happens. But at the same time, I do think that there should have been a bit more research, at least into what Scirocco had done previously. Now, perhaps this article was written when Scirocco was taken offline, but still, I do think that there should be a revision of some kind if he wasn't online at the time to when he was online, so you could see some of the other videos that he's done, simply because of the fact that those comment sections may not be as vitriolic as this one. But again, of course, you could say, like I said earlier, maybe he should remove the comments, or maybe he should have them actually disabled. Now, he wrote a few things himself on Twitter. They are quoted in this article as well. He mentioned that so this is where it gets a little weird though, and where I mentioned this actually last time with I mentioned this with the FIFA player, the FIFA 19 player, the last Matt Rants that I did, where I was on his side. Well, the FIFA player, funnily enough, I wasn't on his side originally. Then he made a stellar, amazing apology, and I thought I was right there with him. I was like, good, he apologized. I thought he took responsibility, and then he said more stuff, and I was like, please stop talking. So, and you can listen to that whole Matt Rants to get the full context on that, but in this case, I think just from the get-go, I was like, hey man, please stop talking. And then he had better things to say later, but he says, I know you're probably expecting some political answer, but the truth is, it was simply a funny moment from one of my streams, which I've decided to upload as a separate video. I mean, I guess maybe you could say the idea of feeding anyone to an alligator sounds funny, just in general, I fed that person to an alligator. So it kind of sounds funny, but the idea of, I don't want to look like, I know you want some political answer, but I don't want to look like I hate feminists, so I'm going to say it was funny to feed the feminist to an alligator. No. You don't. If you want to try to prove that you're not giving a political answer, don't say that it sounds funny. Just putting it out there. Now, but he did say though. He said, not sure if it was intentional by Rockstar Games, but the NPC is made to be rather annoying. When you try to shop for clothing in the game, your dialogue with the shopkeeper keeps being interrupted by her shouting. So I simply wanted to shop in peace. I'm sure that as a gamer, you're familiar with these annoying NPC situations. I will admit, when watching his video, which I have to admit to, I will link it down below, it is kind of weird. I know it's an NPC character, I know it's a video game, I'm not saying people shouldn't play the game or anything like that, but it does seem odd, because the thing is, yes, she is yelling at you, yes, that can seem annoying, but punching her, just cold cock it, just right in the face, and then throwing that lasso and getting her on the horse and pulling her and everything and dragging her, and it was just, I don't know, it just felt graphic and weird, which is a weird thing to say for me, because I love horror movies. Some movies can get me a little on edge, but I've even seen body horror films. But for some reason, I think because you're maybe taking control of the hero or villain in this case, if you are doing that, or because she doesn't have anything to fight back with, or because maybe it isn't a quick thing, like a Jason thing from behind with a knife or something, that it was prolonged. Maybe that's what it was. Not too sure, but either way, it was still a thing where, yes, you want to shop in peace, okay, but it's just weird for him to justify it in that way. Again, he's allowed to have an opinion, but again, I'm allowed to criticize it as well. Also would like to mention, he did go on in this part, I understand where he's coming from here. He says, I mean, obviously I don't agree with the sexist comments, but there is not much I can do about them. I don't like censoring people's opinions, regardless if I like them or not. Now, here's the thing. It's not, I hate to be the stickler, but I always try to say this either in videos or just in person. It's not censorship. You're not a government organization. It's technically, you could argue it's your house. Sure, it's YouTube's house overall, but you're renting a space in YouTube's house. You can tell people who are coming into your house if you want them to speak a certain way. Now, I try to have dialogue with you guys in the comment section down below. I don't try and remove comments. So I try to actually, even if you guys are shitting on me in the comments, I try to at least have some kind of either funny or witty retort. Even if you guys don't think it's funny, someone somewhere does. If it's only me, fair. I might be biased, but still. But either way, so I do try to have conversation with you guys, but I do admit that if this did blow up to the point where there's millions of people commenting, it would be very hard to, and it'd be very hard to police those comments as well, to be fair. So before we move on to the end of the video and answer the question at hand, we are going to talk about censorship yet again. So this is not going to sway my opinion one way or the other, but I still do want to mention, just because I know some of you guys will talk about this in the comment section down below, if you have not already, YouTube is allowed to remove him regardless of whether or not the content is deemed offensive or not. Now I know you're going to say, but Matt, that's censorship. Actually, it's not. So YouTube is not a government organization. They are not run as a government utility. So they are a business that is allowed to remove anyone from the platform anytime they want to. Now, this could be considered bad press for YouTube. So in that regard, they could remove him if they want to. Again, he has been brought back to the platform. So clearly they realized, ooh, maybe this isn't as offensive as we thought. Or maybe they thought that they were getting more backlash and it getting removed. Or they could have just sat back and thought, well, it's in the game. Are we going to remove every single piece of gameplay footage if it's a full run through or something like that, anything at all involving that footage? And they probably realized that that would set a precedent for any type of violence in games being removed from their platform, and they probably sat back and thought, this isn't a good look, even though they don't like what happened in the clip, or maybe the way it was titled, whatever the reason they thought there was a problem, or the articles talking about it. Again, bad press for YouTube. They thought, ooh, this isn't good for us, but then they might have realized, well, wait a minute, not only is, even though this isn't good for us necessarily, you don't have different news organizations talking about people being eaten. You don't have, CNN or Fox News or anything talking about people being eaten by zombie hordes on AMC, because we all know that's a work of fiction. That's The Walking Dead. If you don't know, that's a work of fiction. And there's no one, that's not actually happening throughout the U.S. There's some weird cases, I will admit. There's a few. You can look them up. There's been some weird cases, but it's not happening en masse like on The Walking Dead. Now, one could make an argument, yes, there are feminists that are being killed in real life, and that is definitely true. But like I said earlier, I do not believe the violence in these video games are what's causing that violence in real life. That is a bunch of different stuff that I don't think has to do with the video itself. It's a lot more political, so I'm not going to get into it right now, but I don't think that this video game or video games like this are what is causing the violence. And if you say, well, it would if a kid is playing it, well, again, Red Dead Redemption 2, just like many other video games, do have ratings, and this game is not meant to be played by kids. So if you have a kid, or your nephew, your cousin or something, you see them playing it, talk to the parents, because they shouldn't be playing that game in the first place. Regardless of what gender they are, regardless of what their parents believe in politically, they shouldn't be playing that game. There's a rating system on there for a reason. But let's get back to that censorship point for just 1 second. So like I said earlier, again, you might be sitting there thinking, no, but YouTube really can't fire you over this, or can't let you, can't ban your channel over this. Again, just like any other job, YouTube can let you go in that way, the same way that any other company can let you go. In some cases, yes, your personal opinions can be affected, even though, and some people on their Twitters, they say, hey, my opinions don't affect, aren't in any way related to my employer's opinions. Sadly, some contracts, they can just let you go, even if they're your opinions, not your employer's. So in this case, while I do think, answering the question now, while I do think that he should have had a different video title, that he probably should have removed the comments in the comment section, and I do think that it was a disturbing video, it should not have been removed, and he should not have been banned. If you are going to remove the video, fine, but then I don't think that should necessarily give a strike to his channel. I don't think he, just by uploading the video, is fostering a place of hatred of suffragettes, of feminists. I don't think that's what's doing it. There are a bunch of other places on the internet that definitely are. It is happening. I will not say that it isn't happening. And I will also even go one step further and say that I don't think that feminists should be getting the hate that they are getting online. I don't. If you want to talk to me about one situation that one person said one thing that was horrific and they claim to be on the left, okay. That one person did that, but that does not represent every single person on the left, and that does not represent every feminist. So I will go as far to say that, but at the same time, I do think that the video should stay. I think that if we're going to point the finger at anyone, it should be at Rockstar Games. Like I mentioned earlier, I would argue they are much more at fault than Scirocco is himself, or themselves. So either way, thank you all so much. I assume you're going to disagree with me. Regardless of whatever you disagree with me on, please comment down below so we can talk about it. Would love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you like the video, you can like and subscribe. If you don't like the video, you can still like and subscribe either way. Thank you all so much for listening, and as always, and tune in next time for another episode of Matt Rants. So thank you all so much. Love you all. Take care, and tune in next time, guys. So, see ya.